Thompson! Get out! We're late for the live cast! I forgot Thompson! We're late! Is everybody ready? All right. Sorry,
do we have audio?
A little late there. Are we broadcasting?
Is there sound? Oh, there we go. Now we have mic.
Okay.
All right.
Things on?
Welcome to the X-Plane live cast. Sorry, just got here just in the nick of time. Now what are we going to talk about? X-Plane. Okay.
We should introduce ourselves.
Yeah, let's introduce ourselves. We will start with me, Austin Meyer, original creator of X-Plane, but no longer the only guy on the team. That is for darn sure. Next.
Now we're all just your hype men.
Yeah. My name's Ben Supnik. I work on the desktop product. I drink a lot of coffee.
Scotch.
Scotch. This is the coffee zone of the day. The Scotch of the day is.
We alternate between coffee and scotch.
Yeah.
That is true.
It's always either too late for coffee or too early for scotch.
Yeah.
I'm Serio. I work on mobile and desktop.
I'm Jennifer Roberts, and you see me behind the scenes with the bug reporter, the newsletter, and the tutorials.
I'm Thompson Meeks. I write a lot of emails and social media posts.
Hi, I'm Marty Arendt. I do marketing and distribution and coffee in the morning and red wine in the afternoon.
I'm Tyler Young. I'm one of the developers. I did the X-Plane 11 UI.
I'm Alex Unruh, and I am art director on many things like the 737, and I have taken a particular liking to bourbon lately.
All right, there's some things we should probably just talk about before we do QA. There's a couple things. We should talk about Vulkan. We should talk about some of the shows. X-Plane 1130 and 1131 are out. I would say we are in not a panic necessarily, but we're in a bug fix mode right now. We're working on trying to get the X-Plane 1130 builds as stable as possible. So, before we all came to this meeting, we were fixing bugs. We'll be doing that when we go back again. 1130 had a lot of stuff changed, including a really big step towards Vulkan, and we changed a lot of stuff. And, for some users, it's working fantastically. And then we've had other users who, their graphic driver crashes and strange stuff like that. And this has been difficult for us because we probably have 15 PCs inside the company. And yet we don't get to see all the really strange things that can happen on all the copies of X-Plane everywhere. So we're working with users now to try to solve some of the remaining bugs. So if you've reported a bug, please bear with us because we're going to go right back to fixing that stuff when we're done here. And I think over the next couple of weeks, the immediate theme is going to be bug fixing, stabilization, just kind of trying to get back to the most solid X-Plane we can have so that we can then go and add more stuff to it.
Right. So I want to go just a tiny bit more into detail here. Last night, Ben, who's really doing the graphics now, I'm doing flight model, Ben's doing graphics and project management. Ben ran me by a little bit more of a specific way that we are addressing these bugs in Vulkan. And here's what it is. When X-Plane was initially written by me, it was old school OpenGL. Then Ben came in and made it like a better OpenGL. And now we're switching over to Vulkan. Now I want to be a little more specific. We do not want to take every single OpenGL graphics call in the entire sim and then switch it over to a Vulkan call. If we did that, two things would go wrong. First, it would take forever and be a pain in the butt. And then the second thing that would go wrong is when something replaces Vulkan, we'd have to do it all over again, and we'd be chasing bugs forever. So instead, what Ben has done is he's rewritten X-Plane, or is in the middle of rewriting X-Plane from the inside out to something called GFX for graphics effects. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess here. GFX. And so GFX is splattered all over the X-Plane code, right? Draw a planet, draw a runway, draw an airplane. It's all GFX calls. And these GFX calls go to one central headquarters. And we turn that one central headquarters into Vulkan. And that means we exactly control what's going on in that central headquarters. And just by modifying that one little central headquarters of the GFX core, all the 1,000,001 things in X-Plane that call that core get better. And that basically does several things. It causes us to not have to fight Vulkan bugs all over the code. it lets us go to metal on the Macintosh.
Right. Everywhere you said Vulkan, the Mac users just hear the word metal.
Metal, right.
And that's why you want to have something in the middle so that we don't have to just have
Something in the middle,
that.
not meaning halfway between Vulkan and metal, meaning something between X-Plane and the graphics processing unit.
Right.
That's what he means by in the middle.
Right.
So you've got the GFX that takes all the X-Plane language stuff, loads into this headquarters, the GFX headquarters. And the GFX headquarters says, I'm on a Windows, I'm doing Vulkan. I'm on a Macintosh, I'm doing a metal. And it means that when we start getting bugs, we just get the headquarters rock solid. And when the headquarters are rock solid, we can use that GFX headquarters from anywhere in the sim anytime without introducing new bugs. And so the way we're doing it's a little bit slow and painful. When we're done, we're going to be so much more powerful because of it. And then here's where it really gets cool. The next graphics language that will be presumably invented by the robots by the time we're going to the retirement home or whenever it is, we'll be able to switch over to that really easily because all we'll do is load the next cool graphics thing right into the GFX headquarters. We'll never have to rewrite X-Plane all over again. So this whole Vulkan metal thing has been extremely slow and painful, but only because we are setting ourselves up to be able to turn on a dime in the future by having the X-Plane GFX language go to the Vulkan/metal headquarters.
Right.
That can be replaced by whatever we, and you were talking about we could do DirectX 12 if we wanted. Now that's not saying we're putting on the to-do list because it might not be the best
But it would
technology
be
for
cheap.
the app.
It would be cheap.
Yeah, but if it turns out that DX12 is better than Vulkan or something like that, then hey, all the graphics calls go to the headquarters. They have the headquarters just do DX12 and we're good. So it positions us for the future with a much tighter, better organized
Right.
system.
And what we're building is modern because when I started working for Austin, like a Mac G4 or a Pentium 4 was the most badass machine you could have, and it had one core, and there was absolutely no point in doing anything on multiple threads because there was no extra cores to run them on, right? Whereas now, 4 cores, 8 cores, 16 cores, clearly multi-core is the way to go. So unlike OpenGL, and OpenGL is lousy for multi-core, it just doesn't do it well. GFX is designed from day one to be multi-core friendly so that when we make this migration over, we don't have to stutter. We can go have another core do the work and X-Plane can keep going through. And eventually we'll be able to have more than one core even work on one frame so that that multi-core count is what drives up your frame rate and not just how fast is your CPU clock. And this has been something that people have wanted ever since we started getting 4 and 8 core machines, and GFX is designed from day one to make this possible.
Now, let me go ahead and just give just like a tiny little bit more information on this. It used to be that even if we did do anything multi-core, and it's an absolute pain in the butt, you have to spin off this different little procedure with all these different accessors. And I never totally understood it. And I bug him for the right way to launch multi-threaded processes. And then the multi-thread process might come back at the wrong time and crash the computer. Multi-threading used to be an absolute disaster. But as he taught me literally last night over dinner, the new C++ has multi-threading that is so easy it is ridiculous. You just open like this little new code block, drop in multi-threading, close out the code block, and it'll return the answer when it's done. And it doesn't matter if it takes a while to do it because it's done in the background and it won't stutter the sim. And so not only is our new GFX language multi-threaded, but C++ 11, which we're switching to, allows much, 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 much easier multi-threading. And so we are just going to be ripping through using all the cores you got to make sure the sim doesn't stutter. So a lot of rewriting the sim from the inside out, but that's what we're doing.
So I can give a little more status on where we're at with Vulkan and Metal. As of today, we have Vulkan and Metal running Planemaker, which it sounds like, it's just Planemaker, not the sim. But Planemaker draws the aircraft exactly the way the sim does, which means we've got everything that ever gets involved in airplane draw, all of the materials, all of the shaders, the PBR shaders, the OBJ system, and all of the stuff underneath that makes it work is all running in Vulkan and Metal. And at this point, all of our shaders have been ported to be able to run on Vulkan and Metal. And so we are just about to start, I guess next week, on the next step, which is actually getting the sim itself to boot up in Vulkan or Metal.
And we've also done Planemaker and
Right. Planemaker was first. It required us to be able to draw and have shaders. Then Planemaker was next. We had to have materials and objects. And so now we're ready to go on and do the sim. And I'm excited for this because only when we get the sim running will we actually get a number that tells us how much faster Vulkan is, or is it even faster? We can't estimate it until we try it. And Sydney and I have been dying to find out what the effect is going to be.
Yep.
But besides getting whatever performance benefit on the CPU we get from
That was weird. We just get a Java update. That's hilarious.
are we
You
still
want
on
us to update Java?
are we
right
still on the
now?
air? Or are we all right?
Are we on the air? Okay.
Sure.
Now our computer stopped and said, "You want to update Java?"
I don't know that we can proceed with the live cast if we're not running the latest version of Java.
Jesus Christ. Okay. Continue.
Right. So, we're about to move into the part where we actually do this importing and find out what the performance benefit is. But we are also ending up with a code base where we don't have stutters in our code because we have great tools to be asynchronous, and where the driver isn't going to stutter because on Vulkan, the spec tells us exactly what's going to be fast and slow, and we can say slow, do it on a background thread. Whereas in OpenGL, it's like, please draw. All right, I'll get to that at some point, and you never really knew. This is one of the, so just to tangent back to 11.30, 11.31, Sydney and I, and by that I mainly mean Sydney, have looked at a lot of performance issues because there was a lot of performance complaints going from 11.26 to 11.30. We are not trying to fix small changes in performance. Like if you're down 5%, we don't want to go back and beat on OpenGL more because we're so close to Vulkan, and that's what's going to make it faster. Now, one thing that we have seen is a number of people who complain about performance had highly mismatched systems, meaning the GPU was like a GeForce 1080, like a big bad GPU, and then their CPU was maybe 8-9 years old. I'm running a 5-year-old iMac, which is starting to be long in the tooth, and we saw reports from people who had about half the CPU power that I'm running with. So that's an old machine, and what the frame rate test showed was that the GeForce 1080 was bored out of its mind. The computer literally couldn't tell it to do the work fast enough. So in some ways, I'm optimistic because Vulkan very much targets that CPU use. It's about how fast we talk to the GPU. The shaders are going to run at the same speeds, the same shaders. So we're not going to be able to fill in pixels faster. If you can't run at 4K, Vulkan doesn't help. But if you're held back by your CPU, and a lot of users are, that's where we can hope to have some benefit. We are seeing some performance issues that we are still looking into because they're bizarre. So we're trying not to leave anything that's really, really broken. But we think that Vulkan is a really good next step for performance, both because we hope it'll be faster and because it's going to be an environment where we can see what we're doing, where we know what the driver will be doing, where we have more control. And because Vulkan is kind of the new thing that's being done for games, if we have a problem with the driver and we go to NVIDIA or AMD, they're going to be able to help us. Whereas if we go to them now with OpenGL, they're like, still using OpenGL.
Yeah.
So I think that we're reaching the point where when we can finish this port, a lot of the things that have been hard about 11.30 will just get much easier.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm betting the driver support's going to be a hell of a lot easier for Vulkan and Metal, not only because they're excited about it, but also because they don't try to do everything for us.
Oh, yeah.
It's closer
Oh, yeah.
to the Metal.
Yes, when Vulkan and Metal came out, the NVIDIA people, the AMD people, they were really happy to have a tight, lean spec that said exactly what they could do, and they could do one thing well. Whereas an OpenGL driver is just a million combinations of things that you might try, and you never really know if they spent a lot of time making it awesome or maybe it's never been tested. So this is Vulkan, Metal, DirectX 12. These new graphics APIs are much better suited to games, to simulators, to real-time apps where you want good performance, predictable performance, and low bugs. So
I think it's important to mention as well that throughout the life of V11 at least, the OpenGL path will still be available. So
that's
you're
right.
not going to have to worry about add-ons.
Right. There is hardware that we support in V11 that cannot run Vulkan or Metal. There's just no driver because the GPU is too old. So we are not dropping OpenGL, both so that if you end up with an add-on that for some reason is incompatible with Vulkan or Metal, or your hardware can't support it, or you try it and your drivers are crashing, you just don't want to deal with it until it's more stable. For all these reasons, we have that safety net. And this is very similar to when we did 32 to 64 bits, and 32 bits ran through for the life of the product. And for our pro customers, this was really important because they had these whole setups built around 32 bits. And we didn't want to be like, surprise, auto update, redo everything. You know, we want to give people a transition.
Yep.
Right.
It might also be worth mentioning that Vulkan and Metal are APIs on mobile as well.
Right.
And in the long term, we kind of expect this to be what we do everywhere, including on mobile where CPU time is really expensive.
Yeah.
And I think we can get all the same kinds of benefits.
Right.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to say is you might already be seeing multi-core usage going up. I mean, every new system we work on now, we have the tools to background things a lot easier. So I think stutters and things like that are going to continue disappear with every update.
Right. All of the work that Chris did on the new ATC voices in 1130,
Yeah.
like anything that has to happen, it happens in the background.
Right.
You know, it literally doesn't give the sim a chance to stutter. Like we say, go over there and do your work over there.
Right.
We now have good tools that make it really easy to write that stuff. And so.
Oh, one thing I should mention is the flight models for all the airplanes other than yours are already multi-threaded. I did it back when it was the hard way to do it. So we already, even though I just learned about the easy way to do multi-threading last night, I banged my head against it and did it the hard way many years ago. So all the additional airplanes other than P0 are already multi-threaded.
Right.
One question that might be at least worth asking is, do we want to multi-thread P0, as we call it, which is the airplane you're flying? And then the problem you get is the visuals love to render what P0 is doing, all the little force vectors on the wings and where the aircraft is, for goodness sake, and all the million and one little indications in the cockpit. And that kind of defies multi-threading, because how do you draw an airspeed indicator if you don't know the airspeed yet of the airplane? Because it's still off in the second thread getting a flight model done. So I don't know if we're going to be moving P0 to the background.
There are still a lot of items in a frame that can be moved over. So for example, every frame starting 1130, we go and we gather the nearby terrain for each airplane, because that's what the physics engine is going to do. It has
You use
cache.
multi-threaded Y-tail.
There's no reason you couldn't gather that stuff ahead of time and have it be running in the background, right? And the rendering engine similarly has a lot of we have to do this prep work here and that prep work there. With good tools, we can start to slowly pull this stuff apart and make it parallel, and it will be much less difficult to do than the things like DSFs and airplanes that have been multi-threaded forever.
Okay. Great. Next.
I'm going to touch on some ATC stuff because I see a lot of questions that I know I can answer. In was it 1130 that released the new ATC voices?
Yeah.
Okay. Some of the work is done in the past, and it's because of the long release cycle, I forget when things go in. So we have new voices for the ATC system, which was important because it's now really easy for us to generate new sounds for new commands. We've had line up and wait.
Yeah.
As a feature of the ATC system that was waiting on new voices to do line up and wait. So now that we have new voices we can generate really easily, features like that become easier. We also have, I'm not sure, I think it's linked on our developer side of the website, but there is a giant spreadsheet online of all of the text that the ATC engine can say currently. And it includes every airline that we have, of which I think I've covered pretty much every airline in the world. If there's an airline on there that's missing, you can add it. So you have all the airlines, all the VOR names, all the airport names, all the aircraft manufacturers and models. So, Cessna, Skyhawk are up there. And it's up there so that you guys, as the world, can adjust the text and the pronunciation of things. So if we're saying Bombardier instead of Bombardier, you can change the pronunciations. And then similarly to the way that we release global airports, we can do a recut of the ATC voices rather easily now.
Yeah.
And you can change the way your home airport is pronounced and get everything sounding right. So over time, I hope that this grows with the same level of success that our global airports have, and we could have better realistic ATC speech. It can also be localized someday, and we can end up as text to speech improves. Amazon improves theirs and Google improves theirs. It's sounding more and more human-like. We can get people from other countries with accents or even native languages and regionalize things. So it was a lot of effort to switch to this technology, but it's definitely going to future-proof the system. As far as other ATC features, there's still a lot on the roadmap. A lot of it I can't discuss, but it's not something that we've forgotten about. I know it looks like it's stagnant at times, but a lot of these things take a lot of hidden work that we can't discuss, and then boom, everything comes out all at once. So I think that's about all I can say about ATC at the moment.
Okay.
You want to talk about
mobile? I've seen more questions about mobile than anything else. So yes, mobile. I'm very excited about mobile. We have a lot of awesome things coming, and unfortunately I have to be a little bit vague, but I will say that we call it GLOMO, but global mobile is coming. It is a thing. We've been working hard on it. We've made great progress. It will be worldwide scenery right to your phone. It will be it will be such that you don't have to take up a ton of space on your phone. You could plan your flight out and pack just the scenery for that flight, just the aircraft for that flight, and go fly just that flight, which might even take up less space than the current install does. So that will be a thing. It will be measured in months, not years. It will be this year. It will be sooner rather than later, I could say.
I think for both Vulcan and Glomo, we're in a situation where it's this year or Austin cuts a finger off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or rolls my eyes like, yeesh.
Yeah.
Oh no, don't do that. Don't do that. Just take the finger.
Now, let me point out something about how excited I am about global mobile. You know, it's great. Okay, you can Glomo, you can fly from place to place on your phone. I think it's kind of hilarious. Your phone has like almost no scenery, but like if an earthworm kind of burrows through the earth, if there's just dirt around the earthworm, that's all he needs, you know, to think he's completely surrounded by dirt. And it'll be the same thing when you fly an airplane in Glomo. It'll just download the scenery for the route you're flying, and it'll seem like you have the whole world, even though the space it's taken and the bandwidth it's taken is just enough for your trip, which is cool. But as we mentioned before, the iPhone version has the X-Plane freaking flight model for like, I'd say 99%. We just removed like the 1% of the flight model. Was taking like 50% of the CPU for the 1% increase in accuracy.
There may not even be a 1%.
I don't think it's
I think
I saw the
all
pound
the
defined in the
symptoms.
code. Well, I guess maybe on my branch. Maybe that hadn't been moved to my branch. I saw a pound defined on. Anyway, if it's not the complete X-Plane desktop flight model, it will be soon. And Chris here, the mobile guy, is now routinely taking CPP files, which are the source code files, from X-Plane desktop and moving it into the phone. The convergence between the desktop and the phone is happening at like the speed of light here. Where we're just literally just grabbing desktop files. Now they're in the phone, grabbing desktop files. Now they're in the phone. And our product roadmap does not have a convergence specifically. However, the technology is just like falling into place. And so the inevitable future of one STEM for all devices is basically becoming inevitable. We're seeing it happening.
It's important to note that it goes the other way too, that you guys are constantly taking stuff from mobile technology that starts on mobile.
Mobile is a fantastic test lab for new tech because it's a small device, and if we make something that runs well on mobile, it screams on a big PC, right?
Yeah,
so there's nothing wrong with having code that's just really tight and not, you know, being loose because it was developed.
Right. Mobile has forced us to have to optimize a lot of code paths that in the past, you know, weren't really necessary for a desktop machine. But now it needs to run on a small phone. You know, it's thermally limited and
It's a win to get that stuff back. I'm excited to see the larger regions of flight because I've always viewed like the 737 on mobile as like a shark in a fish tank. Like this is an airplane with a complete working FMC. Like you could do what a Southwest captain does and plan your entire flight with all the transitions and things, and then you would run out of scenery, right? So having the product be able to just give you that room for a plane that's got that kind of navigation capability and that kind of realism that can do all those phases of flight. I mean, you know, you look at all the things that actually work in the plane.
How long do you think multiplayer will go back and forth between the phone and the desktop product seamlessly? I mean, the snapshot structure is how we do multiplayer still on desktop. You obviously have something different on the phone. Or maybe I should be asking about feature requests in the middle of a live cast, but it seems pretty cool if we could all do multiplayer. It doesn't matter if you're on a phone.
For pretty much everything we do now, we ask the question, can we do this on mobile and desktop and get something that's really, really fast and tight because it works on mobile and just do our very best thing and just do it everywhere?
I say this at every live stream, but I'll keep saying it, is that, you know, everybody's got their camp. But why are you working on desktop? Why are you working on mobile? And I say, we're kind of all working on both.
We're working on the Sims.
Austin may work on only his Mac Pro, but stuff he does ends up on mobile, and the stuff that I do on mobile ends up on desktop. So we're not working on one product, focusing on even the stuff that I'm doing now for global flight on mobile will someday be useful to desktop.
If you look at the performance of like an iPhone X, that thing's got a bit more killing power than the lowest end PCs that show up on desktop, whether it's because it's an old PC or somebody starts using X-Plane, but they bought their PC first. They didn't have a gamer PC. The iPhone X, it's probably faster. It's a beastly phone. So it used to be that there was this huge gap between the two devices. And for a small number of things, they are really different because one of these things has to run on a battery. One of these things has a fan. But for computation and for some kinds of graphics, they are really starting to overlap. So doing one thing everywhere is pretty manageable.
Another thing I want to mention is that with the big global flight update, which might not be the next update. There will be updates along the way, I think, because I have some new stuff coming too that we can talk about. But when the big update for Global Flight comes out, X-Plane 10 Mobile will not be known as X-Plane 10 Mobile anymore. It'll just be known as X-Plane Mobile. The 10 was accurate, 4 or 5 years ago when it came out,
Yeah.
but since then it's been inaccurate because it's had V11, all the V11 code in it basically since
You can
V11
tell.
came out.
You
Yeah.
can tell because the 737 on mobile
Right.
looks almost exactly like
Right.
the V11 737. That's because it is V11.
So one thing I can talk about coming to mobile is also coming to desktop, which is that we recorded Austin's plane, which his Lancer Evolution has a Pratt & Whitney PT6 on it. Beautiful sounding engine, and we hired a professional sound guy to come down and do these amazing recordings of it. I think we did that 2 years ago. And we've been working on using those great PT6 sounds to update the sounds of our King Air. So we have awesome sounding King Air now with great PT6 sounds, flaps, gear, bells, whistles, all the switches, the wipers, everything.
Can we give a shout out to Danielle?
Yeah, shout out to Daniela for
her work sounds phenomenal.
Yes.
Austin's got these amazing clip speakers, and so when we listen to the work, you can just crank it up, and it sounds like there's an airplane taking off in the office.
You get the chills.
Oh,
You hear every little detail. The starter kicking in. At first, he went to start it, and it wasn't lighting. And I listened closely. I said, "I don't hear any igniters. You don't have the igniters on." So every last little detail. It's not a sequence that plays. He goes back and turns them on. You hear that click, click, and you know that when the fuel comes in, it's just gonna hit you. Right. And you hear the
oh my god, yeah.
And then even the prop control, when it's feathered, you can hear the tips of the prop just creating that disturbance. And then when you advance it and it starts to really grab the air and bite, when you go into beta, you hear that wah. Yeah, it's a really amazing aircraft.
And it's all recorded right off my plane.
It's actually Austin with his mouth going like he is the sound of the beta.
Yeah. So those sounds will be coming to mobile as well as desktop.
Yeah. So we will have as we do additional updates, we'll be able to roll out some of these FMOD planes as an update.
Right. There might also be a 737 sound pack coming. Maybe around June-ish.
We've been wanting to do an airliner for a while, and hear what FMOD can sound like with just a much larger aircraft.
So we don't usually talk about it, but Danielle is working on the 737 sounds. We're doing FS Expo. We can talk about that soon, but at FS Expo, we'll have the 737 fully done with the sounds, and it's kind of amazing to hear. The first time I listened to the engines, I purposely put myself back in the cabin, right at the window seat next to the wing, and I listened to it start up. You hear the fuel pumps come on, and you're like, oh, that's kind of an annoying sound. And then the hydraulic pumps come on, and then the engines start up, and you hear the low rumble. And I got that same nauseous, queasy feeling I get when I actually fly, where you just get all these frequencies just shaking your brain, and I'm like, this is as uncomfortable as the real plane is. This is great.
The FMOD packs are also a tremendous upgrade to VR, because when you're in VR, you've got stereo earphones, so you've got good spatialization.
Right.
And as you walk around with the headset, the sound is reacting in 3D space, so it's a seamless integration of what you see, what you can see in space right there, and now you hear it, and so it brings a level of realism to the environment.
Even things like go and open the door, and the sound completely changes, and depending on.
So you turn your head over there, maybe it's less so, right?
But also the door's open. Let's say you open the aft door, and then you walk down the aisle. The sound is completely different as you walk down the aisle. The buzzsaw sounds of the front fan change as you move, front of the engines or move back behind it. It's really well done.
Right.
It's really amazing to be able to leverage the power of FMOD.
Yeah, when we first put FMOD in, this is the kind of thing we imagined would be possible.
Right.
It's really cool to see it on some more complicated, bigger aircraft.
And it's amazing to know that same kind of thing can come back to mobile.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to mobile for the 737 there.
Okay. What else?
Should we talk about FS Expo while we're talking about Jim?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we've really upped our participation over the last couple of years. We're doing now 6 or 8 shows a year, major aviation and simulation events. This year we're going to be doing, looks like 4 shows in Europe, at least 2 shows in the US. First show that Thompson and I will be going to will be next month, the 15th in Madrid, will be the AirSim show. Then in April, we will be at Friedrichshafen at the Aero Show in southern Germany. That is on the, let's see, the 10th through the 13th of April. And then our big show is FS Expo, which will be June the 7th through the 10th. That will be in Orlando. And we're a major sponsor of that show. And I can tell you, we're not ready right now to announce this, but we're going to have some really nice events that Laminar is going to be putting on at that show. So you need to watch the newsletter, watch social media.
So we can't tell them now?
Well, we can tell them there will be a major landing competition there, which we will be doing tryouts, at our booth. And for those participants that finish the tryouts and are successful, they will be moving into the main auditorium on Sunday, and we'll be doing the competition with major prizes being given out to the winners, and that will take place in front of all the participants, and we'll have a panel of 3 judges there judging the competition. It will be in VR. I would also like to point out that the shows that we're doing this year, we will be showing VR both in Madrid, in Germany, and at FS Expo, and probably do another couple of shows in the fall. And if you haven't seen VR and X-Plane, it's something you really need to experience. So if you don't have a headset, just come to the shows, and we'll be glad to show it to you.
I mean, the bottom line is Orlando, without giving away like all the details, because I guess we're still finalizing them. Come by the booth. You're going to try the Ultimate Aviation Challenge in X-Plane in VR. The top 3 finishers in this incredible challenge, top 6 finishers in this incredible challenge will go do this same ultimate challenge, like Olympic-style aviation event in front of the entire show, and it'll be judged by Jan Vogel, an airline pilot who does like everything by the book and will evaluate your flying at professional level. Me, who's the exact opposite of that, and we don't know the third one. Okay,
a third judge to be named,
and a third judge who will be somewhere in the middle, and then the winner gets cool stuff. But the cool stuff, of course, is completely secondary to showing how good a pilot you are to the entire Flights in Expo in the auditorium with the big screen.
So you'll have to decide if you want to put the plane down right on the touchdown mark and get a really good vote from Jan, or do you want to actually just ding the threshold light and stop it a foot and earn Austin's respect?
And then that's what I'm going to vote for you. Yeah, I'm going to go for like the 2G landing, 6 inches past the threshold, get the reversers engaged just before touchdown and on the brakes.
And then skid the plane sideways.
And if you go like we parked the Teslas just now, get a few bonus points.
That's why we have 3 judges. It's got to be 2 out of 3.
Right.
We know what Austin
is. The lunatic in the room doesn't ruin it for everybody. But yeah, so it'll be a 3-judge panel, and I'll be one of the judges. I look forward to insulting everyone.
That was the worst landing.
Austin Meyer, the Simon Cowell of the landing contest.
Yeah, if your landing is by the book, I'm going to complain it was boring.
I'll get you a black turtleneck to wear.
Awesome. All right, what else we got that's planned before we go to Q&A?
Should we go to Q&A, or
does anybody have anything planned they want to do, or do we want to go to Q&A? Anything anybody else wants to add? All right, let's switch to Q&A. Who wants to do this, Chris or Thompson?
I get to ask questions?
Sure. You can, as long as you choose from the list.
All right, let's see what we got here. Some of these we've already answered, guys. If you want to, when we're done, the video will be posted on our YouTube X-Plane official website, and then you can go back and watch the beginning. We talked about mobile. We talked about performance improvements. We talked about Vulcan.
Yep.
We don't have release dates on any of that stuff. Soon.
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
Real soon now. Trademark.
Chris, are we planning to change anything about how VR works in X-Plane anytime soon?
Maybe. I don't have a ton of huge VR improvements. I know there are some new headsets coming out with some cool features. I assume those will be supported based on how popular they are. Sometimes there's some really cool looking ones that might sell like 100 units.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably aren't going to grab it.
Most of the smaller headsets now support Steam VR.
Right. So if it supports Steam VR, it probably will just work.
Right.
You know, if Oculus comes out with a new one or Vive comes out with a new one, those will probably just continue to work.
I should note we have gotten a lot of requests for third parties who want to work with the VR system, and we have totally heard this. We have not gotten to it yet, and I would say that when it comes to features for third parties, Vulcan is kind of like this giant sandwich that we stuffed in our mouth and we're like right now, and we need to swallow Vulcan and get it done before we can add more stuff for third parties, more APIs, things. Like VR APIs is one where I've heard it a lot from a lot of different groups, and there's no question that the sim needs this. That VR is not as flexible. There's a ton of cool things that could happen. I think as long as Vulkan is partly done, I think we kind of have to get that killed off first. And once we do that, then we'll be able to be a little more responsive like we normally are for third-party requests. So, you know, I just want to say it's not that we haven't heard it or that we think the requests are done. We actually think the requests are dead on, you know, and it's just been bottlenecked by sort of the cost of this large change to our code base.
Right. So X-Plane 11 mobile, there's just going to be X-Plane mobile. We're already pretty much X-Plane 11 mobile. I see that question coming up a bit. Maybe they missed the beginning. Let's see. Will you be adding support for bone animations?
That is on our to-do list. It is also one of those things that's in the bucket of Vulkan has to be done. Otherwise, the people who would do this can't be stopping the Vulkan port to go do bone animations. That is on our roadmap for the OBJ engine. Is probably the next and most important thing for the OBJ engine. We actually made we made partial progress towards this feature in 1130. There's a bunch of stuff under the hood to start to treat objects as actual skeletal structures inside the sim, which is a necessary step for this. But yeah, that one is at the forefront of our radar because, you know, it's useful for a ton of cases. When we first did OBJ models, this was back me and Austin, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't do native skeletal because the hardware really didn't have a good way to do it. I mean, we could have done it less efficiently. And so the system we have now was really pretty clever for like a P3 or that iMac or that G3 iMac.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's no question that skeletal is the right way to go and is better for the sim. So, you know, it's a question of when and not if.
Here's a question for you, Austin. Have you played with seaplanes yet?
Yeah, so I flew the Icon A5, and I'm going to fly a Cessna 172 on floats. And actually, just behind that screensaver, back behind Alex, is X-Plane fired up with the seaplane code in diagnostics mode. So I'm actually working on that this morning, literally. So basically, Ben has said there's two things I need to do in X-Plane to put out fires. One is seaplanes, other is ground trucks. So those are the next items on my to-do list. Oh, so just a quick little backup. What I've been working on is prop launch dynamics. So some of you might know I'm involved in electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft company Beta, where I've helped design the airplane and the flight control system and the avionics for an electric vertical takeoff landing airplane. And so what I've been doing in X-Plane to meet this project is just prop wash dynamics and the spin and the acceleration of the air and how the prop wash interacts with the wing, because electric VTOLs are so oriented around what the prop wash does to the rest of the airplane. So I've historically, over the past 6 months, been doing Xavion and much more accurate prop wash flight model. But for the next, say, 30 days or so, I'm cranking on seaplane and ground trucks, because those are like kind of the glaring errors that have not intersected the actual projects I'm working on, but everybody else still wants done. So it just got knocked to the top of my list.
With X-Plane 1130, we got partway there, and that we now have a collision engine that is no longer constrained to only collide down. So for the longest time, X-Plane only checked whether there's something under your aircraft, because as Austin liked to say, it's not a crash simulator, it's a flight simulator.
Right.
And that limited collision model was less expensive back in the day with the old single core machines, and it was good enough to tell you if you were going to die, which was kind of the operative question. But for a seaplane, you know, you're going to put
Bounce off the dock.
Right. And what you don't want to do is bounce off the dock and go,
Yeah, go
right.
woo, like that.
So we actually have shipped the physics that make that possible. So when Austin goes in to look at the issues with the actual physical equations, the rest of the sim is now ready for him to get the physical input that is actually affecting the plane. So this has gone from a not solvable problem because of scenery engine problems to a solvable problem in the physics.
Yeah, it's like the Vulkan of a terrain collision. The infrastructure is now in place. So yeah, I just got to tweak the float and body so they bounce off the dock to the side.
That change in the collision engine has been on those to-do lists for years.
Yeah, and I'm also going to work on the drag. So weird thing about drag is proportional to the square of the speed. And so that means that mathematically the drag of the floats goes to zero as the airplane slows down, and so the airplane never really stops. But it's not exactly what happens in reality. So the low speed floats, and the amount the airplane bounces is due to the damping in the water, how much the water is damped out as it moves up and down with the floats. So there's just kind of some subtle damping, drag, and lateral bouncing off of things rather than landing on top of things like airplanes normally do. So just these kind of final annoying little edge cases to get everything absolutely perfect still have to get done.
Tyler, can you talk about real weather download?
Yes. So there are two things going on in the real weather download space. There's a major problem right now, which is that NOAA has moved all of their URLs to HTTPS. They want you to download it over a secure connection. And the SIM was previously using the old URLs. And if you go to that URL today in a browser, you'll get redirected to their homepage, and it says, "Hey, you got to use the HTTPS version now." But of course, Xplane doesn't. If you load that web page in Xplane doesn't know what to do with it, right? And so we have to fix that. The other issue that we're going to solve kind of for free as part of fixing this is that the NOAA web servers can be unreliable. They can serve an error page for like a few hours at times. And so real weather downloads in the past would fail. And this was always in the category of like, sorry, we can't fix this. You got to go talk to NOAA, right? And moving forward, we're going to have some infrastructure to make this more reliable. So if the NOAA servers go down, ours will still be up. So your real weather will not be interrupted by that sort of thing. So we're gonna fix a lot of chaos there really quickly.
So we're beginning to function the post-government apocalypse that is starting to show up in bits and pieces as the shutdowns kind of crumble.
NOAA didn't consult us about this meeting before they made the change. So the change happened something like 18 hours before we had to get on the plane. So the attempt to fix it in 1132 was basically me just throwing code up against the wall and then running off to the airport, which is why it fixes like half the problem. So once we're all back at our computers, we're going to go back and fix this. I think,
So one possible cool way would be if we had our own, the Laminar weather library, and it got loaded up by NOAA or who the heck knows what else. Then Xplane just check the Laminar weather library, and we keep our library running. So, or server, I should say, rather than library, I guess. But, so that's a possibility.
Right. But the time frame on getting real weather working is ASAP. Like when we go home, the first thing we do is like try to solve real weather being off the air.
Until NOAA changes its mind again and the government shuts down again. Not that will happen.
We have like 2 more weeks before that happens.
Oh, okay, 2 weeks. Never mind.
No
We're good.
politics. No. I should say rather cryptically that there's a lot of questions that I want to answer. I think they're really cool to talk about, but we have such a long roadmap. Like we're always looking to the future, and I can't touch on most of these questions, which means it might be coming or it might not. Like I can't say. So if I don't get to your question, it's probably because I can't talk about it. There's like,
and you can't talk about it just because you're doing it.
Right. So if you're saying the same thing, and I see a lot of people talking about the same topics, like we definitely see, like, I don't know of any other company that's so focused on user feedback and like every little request we see, like everything gets considered. And, I feel like it's just a giant community that all contributes to the sim. Even if the coders are small, like everybody participates in making the product great.
Right.
So we see a lot of things that like, we hear you guys, even if I can't acknowledge it, we hear you.
Some of these code areas, it's a huge relief to ship the feature just so we can actually
I can finally talk about it.
Yeah. Or we get close enough to it that all of a sudden it becomes, fair game for marketing and not like, do not talk about feature X. And,
right.
When things are a long way out, we are starting the coding to do these things a ways out to try and be ready, but it can also be really hard to predict when the code will be done or how well it will work. And so, we don't want to go out and say, oh yeah, in 3 months, we're going to have this amazing thing.
Right.
And, we discover later that there's an unforeseen problem we didn't predict, and then it has to be delayed, and everyone goes, well, damn it, you said it would happen. And, it's
right.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid sort of a disappointment cycle here.
I just want to be clear because it seems, on the customer side of things, I feel this with companies that I deal with, that sometimes it seems like you're not being heard, but trust me, you're being heard.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a common request. Like we hear it, we definitely hear it. And sometimes the decisions that we make, whether we work on something else and you may think, oh, why are they working on that? This is more important. Like, when you don't have all the details, it's hard to judge what's important. Sometimes something else is the framework for a feature that is higher priority, but you could do the lower. It seems less interesting, but it's the right, it's the foundation for the future feature.
Right.
So you got to trust that we do know what we're doing some of the
Sometimes.
time.
Occasionally. It's never just like how much people want it. It's also what else you have to build to get to the feature.
We never know what we're doing at the beginning, but we always have it figured out by the end. That's development.
We usually have
Development.
it to figure out by the end.
Yeah.
Most sometimes.
Any of you guys had any questions you saw that came up a lot?
I can't even read the questions.
Yeah.
Text is too small.
Pretty much what you said, Chris. They keep shouting about the same thing.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could talk about some of these, but someday we can talk about these.
We hear you in every channel.
Yes.
Ben, do you want to talk about the RTX cards and stuff with X-Plane?
RTX cards are a thing. We are not yet using RTX. This is, first of all, this is definitely in the category of finish swallowing the Vulcan sandwich before we even look at RTX.
Wait, what is RTX?
RTX is NVIDIA's new real-time ray tracing technology. This is going to end up not just being NVIDIA because there is a DirectX and there's going to be a Vulcan standard for how GPUs accelerate ray tracing. When a GPU accelerates a problem, some of it is just doing math, and GPUs are good at it, and sometimes there has to be a standard for how you talk to the GPU. And like right now, that is triangles. We give the GPU triangles and it draws it. And, you know, I tell my son, everything in this scene is triangles. And he goes, where's the triangles? Oh, they're really small. RTX is not triangles. It is ray tracing. So this is a pretty new and big change in how GPUs work. Because for the first time, you can efficiently use that ton of math on the GPU to do ray tracing. You basically put your entire scene down on the card and say, go bounce the rays. And anytime anything hits me, run my shader and figure out how it looks. You know, so we're definitely aware of it. We were, you know, it was a very big announcement when it happened. It's not something we can even look at until after we finish Vulcan. I think this may be similar to a lot of other visual technologies you see in games in that it can come to the shooters, the AAA shooters, and the driving games before it can come to X-Plane, because we have a much bigger, much more wide open world. So some of those early demos was like a tank battle, and you're just in like an alley and there's some buildings and there's a tank and there's puddles everywhere and the tank blows up and you see everything in the puddles and it's ray tracing. It's awesome. But that scene is tiny. It's really small. And in our scene is
Earth. It's just the world.
Yeah. You know, when a shooter talks about a big open world, they're talking about like 30 by 30 kilometers, which we would call Denver International Airport.
Right.
Like as soon as you've left the airport, you have a bigger scene. So one of my concerns about RTX is that scalability is going to be a big factor, right? How do we find a way to use this technology with our larger scenes? Do the cards have enough capacity yet to handle as large of a scene as X-Plane has, or can we find a way to trace some of it? But we are absolutely watching these things because I think some of these visual technologies that can be deployed in the shooters and the racing games first, they do become applicable to X-Plane. Sometimes we just need them to be a little less expensive so we can apply them to more scenery. So, you know, deferred rendering, you know, made it to X-Plane, PBR has made it to X-Plane, and there's more things in that track that I can see us doing. One area where it may be interesting is the interior of aircraft, which I would say is the weakest part of our current rendering system. So, you know, X-Plane is based on physically based rendering. It's based on trying to have equations that match real optics. And when you're outdoors and there's a really big bright sun and a bright sky and a dark ground, you get some pretty plausible images. You know, if you look at the outside of that fuselage, you're gonna say, yeah, that's a shiny Cessna.
Then you get inside the airplane.
Things get much harder, right? Everything is really close to everything. The light's bouncing all over the place. And the approximations we use, the simplifications of those approximations become visible. And so our artists have to do things like pick the right color sheepskin on the back of the seat to try to get the right overall brightness of the scene, because
But that's not the real issue. The issue isn't the approximations. The issue is that we're doing it right, and the cockpit is 100 times darker than what's outside, so it almost looks black on the monitor.
Well,
the monitor can't imitate reality.
we have two separate problems, right? One is that the approximation is crude, and so the artist will try to pick a cockpit that minimizes the crudeness, and that can get better over time. And then the second problem is that, yeah, like in real life, cockpits are really dark, and your eyes, as you look up and down, your eyes adjust so seamlessly. But if you took a camera shot of that, I have this because
you either get a white window and a black cockpit.
Yeah, watch any YouTube video that's kind of amateurish where they didn't, you know, put an ND filter on the.
When my son was 2, we got to go up into the Airbus cockpit, and I took a picture of him in the captain's seat, and you can see my son, you can see the PFD, and you can see white. Like everything out the window is just pure white and is blown out. And the quality of that image, that's kind of what your LCD screen does.
Yeah.
So, we already apply some compression to the image to try to get the image to fit on a monitor. As we get more realistic, that actually becomes more difficult. The more accurate we are, the more we expose this, how different the brightnesses are. RTX can help with the accuracy of the image, right? If you want that image to be more accurate to how the real cockpit is, tracing it out is one of multiple ways we could do better. But we're also going to address the question of usability, which is, for practical purposes, you'd like to see where you're flying in the PFD at the same time on your monitor and not have to be, moving your head up and down. In the shooter games, they consider this a feature, right? You come out of the bunker, you look up and, oh my God, I can't see anything. But realistically, if you've got a big 27-inch monitor, you want to be able to read your instruments and look out the window and move your eyes up and down and not have X-Plane rapidly changing its brightness. So, realism is a challenge both to be really accurate and to fit that accuracy into, home simulation, where sometimes there's huge constraints of what the hardware can be.
Yeah. If you have X-Plane mobile questions, go back to the beginning after we publish this live, because we've covered that in like the first third of the screencast here. Let's see. More advanced FMOD tutorials. So I'm a little torn on that. Like FMOD is FMOD. It's not exclusive to X-Plane. There's some YouTube videos that are unrelated to X-Plane about FMOD. There's
the FMOD guys do their own tutorials.
Yeah,
right?
and I think they just redid their documentation to make it a lot better. If you have very specific X-Plane questions, like how do I get the camera to pan around and have the sound change around the aircraft, or things like that, you can post some comments here, and I'll try to check back later. If you just want specific like FMOD studio help, I think going to FMOD's website and reading through the manual there, or going to YouTube and finding some tutorials.
It's beyond scope for us to teach you how to use an equalizer, a parametric equalizer. But if you do find that something in our docs are unclear, you've watched the tutorial and you're still confused, sometimes that's valuable feedback for us about concepts that are actually, we need to go slower or break them down more.
Let's see. Did you guys have any? You notice anything?
There's a ton of questions. You can't get anything.
Yeah, but a lot of them are like, we've talked about it, or we can't talk about it, or we won't
about
Well, what's the one we can't talk about? Just so maybe they'll stop.
Well, I'm not going to say it because I can't talk about it.
What are you going to do for everything forever for the future of X-Plane?
Oh, and then let's see. Improved scenery loading. Well, they're talking about improved scenery loading.
Okay, more multi-threading.
I'm assuming that by that they mean scenery load time. Right?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, more multi-threading.
We actually have things we can do once the Vulkan sandwich is digested. There's the scenery loading actually is partly hampered because it was designed for X-Plane 10, which was 32-bit. And so the serial loader mostly tries to not blow out the amount of memory, because back in X-Plane 10, we had 3 gigs, didn't matter how much you had. That limit's gone, we're all 64-bit. So once we're done banging on Vulkan, I think we'll be able to go back and reorganize that code to be faster as opposed to tighter on memory.
Will we ever be free of Navigraph? What's wrong with Navigraph? Wish we had Philip here for that. There's nothing wrong with Navigraph. They update the data for like no money, right?
I think we expect to keep having this paradigm where there's a free base data set and you can pay for.
Someone's like, will we ever be free of them? Well, or do we ever want to be free of updated data? No.
I mean,
better Europe scenery. We had a Europe autogen refresh, as I recall.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I would say that Europe's autogen is on par with United States autogen.
Here's one for you, Ben. Talk about
nice mustache, Austin. Thank you.
talk about 1140. What your plans are for if there's 1140.
Let's see. At this point, I think we're trying to do a series of updates that are smaller, not as big as 1130, because 1130 was just like everything anybody had that had been waiting while we did VR, like, well, let's just throw it all in one big update. And I mean, it took a very long time to get it through beta. So, we're looking at getting some FMOD airplanes out.
Yeah.
We're gonna get some landmarks out. We have several cities that Christian was on that look fantastic.
Christian is just cranking on landmarks.
Right.
We might mention too that the number of wet airports, which are just increasing.
It's hard to keep track.
10,000 3D airports?
They grow so quickly.
Yeah, I don't know if we've hit 10K, but
Well, I mean, the
It is
last
10K.
weekly report, it was like 9,875 3D airports.
it's a question of when.
Think about that. That's
Yeah.
that's a third of the world, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, here's what's so incredible. So with this airport scenery gateway, you make a 3D airport, and it's awesome, but somebody else can come along and make it better and better and better. We've come through 10,000 or just about to touch 10,000 3D airports, and they just keep getting better. So the airport, the X-Plane world is really getting better in terms of the 3D airports, and we can roll that out with no technical risks. You maybe if we're like neck deep in technical stuff we can't release, you might pop out a new update just to get cooler landmarks at Cristiano, what he's doing, LA, San Fran. I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to say the cities or not. These are some of the ones he's done. And then just tons of 3D airports. So the world's going to keep getting more detailed even while we're neck deep in tech and can't release.
We forgot to mention, World Editor 2.0 is imminent. And by imminent, I mean, I was supposed to have cut a beta and I'm here. And when I go home, I can do that. Michael Minhar has just done a bunch of awesome stuff on this.
Marketing announcement, I guess. That's our official marketing announcement. Then
Yeah.
surprise.
There are some users who have been playing
There's only
with.
500 people watching.
There have been some users who have been playing with previews of this, but
It's not top. It wasn't top secret.
to clarify what would have been confusion, this one is going to be called WED 2.0. We weren't sure if it was going to be 1.8 or 2.0. I think this one has enough stuff to call it 2.0. It also, we updated a bunch of our tools, so the very oldest computers that can't even run X-Plane will not be able to run WED. It'll still be WED 1.0. But 2.0 will have, amongst other things, you can get a live background map from the web of either the OSM vectors or aerial imagery, which means that when you're tracing out your airport, you don't have to go find a photo and try and put it in the right place. You just say, show me the map, and it's right there, and you trace it out. So
Ben, you also might want to mention that we're doing the training session at Expo on Friday.
That's
And
right.
That will be on web or on web.
Right, and Jan's going to be there, and Julian's going to be there to talk about WED authoring techniques for people who come early to the Friday sessions.
Right.
We are 2 minutes to 12 right now, guys.
Okay, 2 minutes left.
Last question.
Yeah, maybe last question or two. Somebody pick one.
Ask something funny.
Austin, have you ever played with the Chrome OS?
I've not played with the Chrome OS.
Can I talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
I have a fever dream. WebAssembly has come a long way.
Oh God!
This is not even on the roadmap right now because the tech doesn't even exist. You cannot run X-Plane in a browser. Even if we poured all our resources into this, you can't do it today. But in the future, it is absolutely the writing's on the wall. WebAssembly will one day be able to support multi-threading. It'll be able to support modern graphics APIs. I would love one day to be able to run X-Plane in a browser. And maybe it's a small version of X-Plane. Maybe it's like analogous to mobile. But and this is like 5 years out, maybe. If we're lucky, it's 5 years out. But the tech is progressing so fast, and every year that I catch up on what they're doing with WebAssembly, it's like, oh my gosh, they've gotten so much closer to being able to do real games. I think it's in the future for us.
Wow.
It's far out.
Can we start a poll about whether we think that we're going to have X-Plane in the browser first or the robot apocalypse?
Yeah, the AI replacement.
I think they're both imminent. So
There's 12 guys.
All right, so it's 12.
yeah, we got to cut because a bunch of us all have to catch flights.
Yeah, we got to catch flights and catch brunch and stuff like that. All right, well, hope everybody enjoyed the show. I'll put a quick plug for my webpage, austinmeyer.com. Go check it out. There's stuff other than X-Plane that I'm doing.
There's a lot of people saying they want an Austin Meyer bobblehead. I'm not
Yeah.
joking.
This
actually
was
talked about
actually
that.
discussed at the meeting. We were investigating
We
the
talked about
feasibility,
it.
but,
We did.
but the mustache.
That's gonna be a meme. Somebody GIF that, please.
We're only going to do this if we can do justice to the mustache. We're not going to shortchange.
It's GIFs.
Yeah,
We have to do it right or not doing it at all.
Yes. Thus speaks the mustache.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
mustache has
Yep.
spoken.